Troglodyte warning. Today I'm going to react to a interview with Andrew Gold from Heretics. From one dumb fuck to another, Matt Goodwin. So I can't do the whole hour. That would be psychological torture. So I'm going to do about 20 minutes because otherwise the video would be very long. So let's get straight into the video.
This is what a lot of people watching this show don't yet know, right? They haven't yet realised. If you look ahead, the scale and speed of change that is going to come through British society as a result of migration is going to be something on the scale that nobody in this country has ever seen before. Basically, you've been lied to by left and right. Britain is forecast to see the largest absolute increase in the number of Muslims of all European nations. So we're going to go from 6%. We're going to go up to somewhere around. If you don't play by the rules that govern our society, you're not welcome in our society. Nobody in Westminster is seriously talking about those questions. In fact, the only debates that are happening, Andrew, are the debates on podcasts like this one. I would be amazed if Keir Starmer...
Not true. I mean, you have to be wary of this very emotive language. Douglas Murray does this as well. You have to be really wary because it's very emotive, powerful, and destructive. They use these kind of key power words that narrativize it. They don't look at the facts and figures. Often he'll cherry pick and distort the figures, but he's trying to narrativize this like us versus them mentality. And it's fascistic language. Like, this is fascistic language. Like, they're coming over here, they're invading our country, they're not assimilating, they're not living by the rules, which often they actually do. Some of the most law-abiding people. Yes, you have Islamic terrorists, but you have that in any community. You're going to have people who act out violently. We've had far-right terrorism in the UK. We've had far-right race riots in the UK. So this is going to be a long video.
Did not know that Axel Rudakabana, I've been told by counter-terrorism officials, the only person with a response that seems to be cutting through is Nigel Farage.
Could Nigel Farage be Prime Minister?
There's a revolution that's starting in this country. Unless we change course, this is going to be the biggest demographic and cultural transformation Europe's ever seen.
And what's wrong with that? Because cultural demographics have changed throughout history. The last 10,000 years of humanity, from the agricultural revolution about 12,000 years ago, you've had these massive changes, and it's not going to stop changing. So don't be so scared of people.
Hello, fellow heretics. Thanks so much for watching this content. I couldn't do it without you. I just wanted to quickly ask you to please like and subscribe. I see that only a tiny percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed to the channel. Please click subscribe because it will boost this content to the rest of the world and will also help me to continue convincing the best guests to grace the Heretics stage.
I make loads of money for opinions I don't really have.
I want to talk about how the tide might be turning on mass immigration, but let's get to grips first with the basics. So what is the immigration rate in the UK? What's going wrong?
So I think the UK basically is going through an extreme experiment that is being led by politicians on both the left and the right, both Labour and the Tories, who over the last 20 years have basically opened the floodgates, have imposed on the British people a policy that very few people in this country actually support, and which is
simply not true. Most people support immigration. That's why Reform only got 4 million votes. If it was a huge thing, we would have had a landslide Reform vote, obviously. But it's a radical flank, a very vocal minority who are against immigration, who use it as this kind of wedge issue to just not talk about the problems of capitalism and neoliberalism and inequality. So what else if you can't talk about capitalism and the real problems, well, historically, what else do you talk about? Usually it's immigrants, it's trans people, it's Jews, it's the same old story. And if you can't step back and look at the historical precedent of what he's doing here, I'm sorry, you're lost. You're part of the problem. And it's only going to get worse because this guy does not care about... He's making a lot of money. He's doing talks of think tanks, corporate interests. He is in the pocket of people who have the money. And it's very convenient that he's not questioning the status quo. Because, again, an experiment. So much of the immigration in the last couple of years has been, half of it is, a big proportion of it at least, is student visas, people coming over to study in the best universities in the world. And then you got people coming over working. And we've had an increase of Indian immigration. We had the Ukraine war and people coming from China. So we have to be honest and look at the figures and look at the global context of when immigration does go up. I mean, and it was high last year. It was massively high. But we have to be honest about it and not just be like, oh, they're letting the flood. It's always the emotive language of fascism that seeks to play on your fear as opposed to look at the facts and look at what we need to do and where the real problems are coming from.
Is now making Britain poorer. I think the evidence now shows that. More divided. Less.
No. Actually, most people are poor because they're not being paid by their employers. The economy outside of London is dead. And most people are working class immigrants, friends with immigrants. And it's a very small amount of people actually blame immigrants for the problems. Like, people are people at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your ethnicity is, wherever you come from. If you work hard, and again, immigrants are some of the hardest working people you will meet from all over the world. Indian, Polish, Pakistani, whatever. They work hard. They come over. They contribute. And actually, they contribute more than the people who are natively English or Welsh or whatever. So, again, facts don't care about your feelings, Matt Goodwin. But again, he's not interested in it because he's got an agenda to consolidate wealth, continue the status quo, and blame all the problems caused by the people at the top on the people at the bottom. It's fake populism, and I think, again, luckily, most people don't buy into it, but some do.
It's prosperous. And I think unless we get our arms around this problem and stop it and address it and end the period of mass uncontrolled immigration, we're going to have enormous problems.
Mass uncontrolled. It's just not true. It's like so manipulative and just lies. It's like, oh.
So I think I asked you this last time and I still can't get my head around it. For whose benefit is this rapid mass immigration?
Yeah, so firstly, I mean, the scale of the changes we need to think about. I mean,
again, that assumes that immigration is a bad thing. Like, people aren't allowed to, like, because it's a question of freedom. Like, should people be able to live wherever they want on God's green earth? And you either say, yes, people should have freedom to live where they want, or people can only live in certain parts. That's it. It's a freedom argument. And I think people should be able to live wherever they want. But if you don't, you're against freedom as far as I'm concerned. You're saying that only certain people can live here. You can live there. Why? Who gives you the authority to say where people should live? People should be able to live wherever they want. Again, freedom. But they don't care about freedom. They pretend to care about freedom, but they actually don't.
Over the last couple of years, we've had 2.5 million people migrate into the UK. That's equivalent to about two cities the size of Birmingham in 2 years. We've got much of that migration now, thanks to Boris Johnson and the Tories, is coming from outside of Europe. So about 86% of all migration into Britain.
Yeah, that's Brexit. I'm sorry, that's what you voted for. Sorry, we voted for Brexit. We've left the EU. That's the consequences. So don't get too upset. That's what you voted for.
Is now coming from outside of Europe, from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Pakistan. And a lot of folks in Westminster will say, well, this is good for the economy, but actually only about 16 to 18% of people who are coming into Britain now, 16 to 18% are coming in on high-skilled worker visas. So you think, well, who the hell's coming in? Who else is coming in? Students, the relatives of workers.
That's not actually true. 60% of people 62% of people actually come over. So, again, it's assuming that people who come over and do low-skilled labour are somehow not worthy. Well, why? Again, pretending to care about the working class. Again, it's never about again, fake populism. Pretending to care about working people, and they don't. Because if you care about working people, their race, ethnicity doesn't matter. Unless you're a racist. And obviously, he is. Because, again, he doesn't care about the working people. No matter what your skin colour is, your ethnicity, your gender, it's all about keeping this weird notion that England is for English people, that immigration isn't a natural thing. It's almost as natural as trade, I would argue. Like, would you argue against trade, which we've been doing for thousands of years? Trade isn't inherently a capitalist thing. It's human movement. When we left Africa, I think it was about 14 to 16,000 years ago, and we started moving across the planet. That was a natural thing. It took us a while. It took us 200,000 years or so. I mean, Africa's a pretty big continent. But when we started moving around, that was a natural thing. And we're still moving today. And that's okay. It's a natural human thing to want to explore, live in different countries, experience different cultures. Cultures they come together, they kind of integrate, they go around. It's a natural process that he doesn't want for some reason. And that's the questions he should be asked. Again, he's got no pushback. He's just like, well, why? Why should we care about this? Isn't there bigger problems going on? But again, he won't because he's a fucking idiot.
Asylum seekers, illegal migrants. So what basically is happening is mass migration is
conflating illegal asylum seekers, illegal migrants. Okay, so what about the people who come over and contribute? 1/5 of the workforce contribute. Why won't he be honest and say, let's have an honest discussion about the problems? Because there will be. We had a lot of immigration, nearly 1 million last year. There is problems that come with that. But we can, with all problems, there are solutions, i.e. invest in building housing, invest in our infrastructure, because the last 14 years, we've not had that investment. If anything, we've had austerity, which is the problem, by cutting public spending, by cutting it to the bones, and giving, bailouts to banks, but not bailouts to the working people. That's the problem. But again, he can't talk about that because it goes against his interest. It goes against his paymasters. So again, we can't solve these problems because he doesn't want to solve the problems. He doesn't. He gains from this. He gains political capital. He can do these podcasts and talk about these problems. He does not want solutions. I promise you, he does not care about solutions. And also, you're not going to solve the problems by curtailing immigration because those problems, still economic inherent problems, are still there. But he won't talk about that.
All of us into managed decline. It's costing us economically. I've shared this information widely on Substack, but even the Office for Budget Responsibility now accepts, which is a kind of, woke government department, now accepts.
Again, when they use the word woke, what they're saying is complete bullshit. It's a meaningless term. Again, emotive. It's just emotive language.
That mass immigration is making us poorer. So for every low-wage, low-skill migrant coming into Britain, it's costing the taxpayers watching this show between £150,000 and £1 million over their lifetime.
Yeah, but they don't talk about the fact that when they come over in the early 20s, we've not paid for them for the first 18 years. So you have to discount that amount. And the fact that often they are given massive value because they're coming over here and doing jobs that British people don't want to do. Again, we've got such a shortage of labour, 150,000 carers, 40,000 nurses, 10,000 doctors. People are coming over here to help our economy. But he doesn't care about that because he's got a political project that comes from a place of money and he's given his talking points. Again, he has no values. He used to be a left-winger. He used to be woke. What happened? Well, the money happened, didn't it? Because he was educated, he saw, but now, he had this revelation. So he got the phone call saying, say this, we'll give you a lot of money. It's that simple. He's a grifter. So is Andrew Gold. There's a lot of money in having these point of view. There's not much money in having the views I have, trust me. So it's all about the money. That's it. He doesn't care about this. Again, fake populism.
So what I'm trying to say, to be clear, if you're watching this from Britain or you're watching this from Europe, wondering what the hell's going on in Britain, basically you've been lied to by left and right, and you've been lied to by Boris Johnson and the Tories, and you're now being gaslit by Keir Starmer. And
oh my God, that word again. Keir Starmer is talking about reducing immigration. He's deported the other week 13,500 people. He's talking about immigration. He agrees with you that we need to reduce immigration. Again, that term gaslight, he doesn't know what it means. He doesn't know what it means. It's just a buzzword for him, like, oh, being gaslit. He doesn't know what the word means.
The Labour government, because we don't have a high-skill migration policy. We have mass, uncontrolled, unprecedented, low-wage, low-skill migration, which is making us...
Yeah, because we haven't got any high-skilled jobs. Create high-skilled jobs. Have a high-skilled economy. But no, since Thatcher, last 40 years, we haven't got an economy. So how about focus on that, not the people who are coming over? But he won't talk about it because why should he? It's not in his interests.
Us poorer and is culturally incompatible. I would argue we are importing masses of people from radically different cultures, from radically different societies. And what that is doing, as serious scholars like Robert Putnam at Harvard and others have shown,
and others can't mention it. Okay, so we need to be serious about this. So when you talk about different cultures coming in, often poorer cultures, and this is a socio-economic thing, purely socio-economic. So if you have people come from poorer cultures, there's a correlation between poverty and reactionary views. So historically, the richer a country becomes, the more educated the population becomes. They embrace feminism. Women have a voice. They become educated. They have more autonomy, bodily autonomy, contraception, and acceptance of gay people, difference becomes more prevalent in society. So when you've got a poorer country, an African country that has been fucked over by Europe, Christianity has been imposed on them, they have reactionary views. They have often patriarchal views. Often, I mean, how many places in Africa and Asia it's illegal to be homosexual? And this is a consequence of the socioeconomic status. So when they do come over, yeah, they will have more reactionary views. But often, they do integrate. There is a good amount of integration. Yeah, there will be problems, obviously, if you've got people coming over. But he's exaggerating these problems because, again, his views, anti-woke. What does that mean? Progressive values. Like, often these kind of people share more conservative views with these people than I do. So they act like, these people don't share the values. Often they don't, but integration is a two-way process where you need to have a dialogue of what we value. And he doesn't want to do that. He just says, they just don't share our values, therefore they shouldn't be there. Well, when often when people are exposed to different values, different cultures, often they go, yeah, women, we should treat women this way. But if you've not been exposed to it, how would you know what those values are? So it's a question of exposure. So again, he doesn't care. He's not about trying to solve problems. He's just about using these problems as capital to make money. And again, he doesn't want to solve this.
Rapid demographic change on the scale that we have in Britain is pushing us into a low-trust society, a divided society where people...
Not true. Inequality is. Social media, the Silicon Valley who have created misinformation, lies, an environment where people are so divided because you have people like this trying to sow division between immigrants, between working people. That's it. And it's the inequality because you have these big Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, who make massive money by not providing any value, by selling misinformation about immigrants, about trans people, about woke. But he's part of the problem. We are divided, but it's because people like him create that division. They don't want us. They want us fighting amongst each other, so we don't question the people at the top. So yeah, it's very convenient for him to say we're more divided because of people like him.
People hunker down and they turn away from their neighbours because they don't know their neighbours anymore. And that's basically what's happening in Britain. Nobody in Westminster really wants to face up to this reality, except some people outside of the big two parties that we'll come back to. But this is being imposed on everybody because it benefits big business. Let's be clear about who's benefiting. It benefits global corporations who want masses of cheap labour because it keeps their costs low and their profits high. It's also benefiting the kind of radically progressive, woke, new elite in London, Oxford and Cambridge because they want to feel good about themselves. They want to have that sense of virtue, that sense of moral righteousness.
No, it's about freedom. Oh, so just stop people coming over. We're going to be an ethno state now. Only white people can be in England. What the hell is he talking about? Again, he's been given these talking points on a sheet and he just goes down, tick, tick, woke. It's just, you can't engage with it because he's not being honest. Like, you have to assume that people are coming from a place of honesty. Like, they actually believe what they're saying. It's embedded in facts and they want to solve the problem. But he doesn't. So how do you engage with it? It's so difficult because people buy into it. People assume that what he's saying, because again, he's got a nice suit on, he's white, he's, fairly educated, that people just go, oh yeah, he's right. They don't look into what he's saying or look at the subtext. They just assume, they take it for granted. Oh yeah, we've been talking about immigration for the last 100 years. It's probably one of the most spoken about thing in British culture in the last 100 years. From Jews coming in 100 years ago, from the 60s, the Windrush, throughout the 80s, 90s, the early 2000s, the 2010s, and now. We've not stopped fucking speaking about it. So the idea that, he's constantly, no one's talking about this. It's all the right wing talk about. No one's talking about changing demographics. That's all they ever fucking talking about because they're obsessed with it. It's all about race. It's all about purity. Like, a weird insecurity about, we've lost our country. No. Our country was taken away from us from neoliberals like Thatcher, Reagan. But again, he won't talk about that.
And they won't live with the negative effects of this policy because they tend to live in neighborhoods that are not affected by it. So those are the big...
What negative effects are those? Again, he has to, like he can't just be honest and be like, he has to insinuate stuff like, they're all criminals. It's pure racism. Like, the fact he's like lumping these people like, they come over, they're just a net drain. They don't contribute anything. Be honest of what they contribute. But he can't because he, again, has these talking points for money. That's it. And people don't believe me when I say that. Like, people... look at Tim Pool. Look at Joe Rogan. They are often bought by very wealthy interests, like Russia. There's big money in this talking points. There really is. But again, he won't talk about that. Why he, has these talking points. Will he ever come out one day? Maybe he will, but he's not going to talk about who's paying him.
Big beneficiaries. Everybody else outside of big business and let's say the 15% elite minority, everybody else suffers. Everybody else pays the costs of mass uncontrolled immigration, both economic and cultural, and everybody else has to deal with disproportionate rates of crime among illegal migrants and new arrivals.
Not true, actually. Just not true.
They have to deal with weaker social cohesion, with the breakdown of our social fabric.
Which is not the fault of immigrants. I'm sorry, it's just not. You look at factorism, the deindustrialization of the UK, massive inequality with neoliberalism, privatization, people at the top, like literally our financial hub of London makes all the money. Outside, what economy is that? You cannot blame that on immigrants. The fact that we haven't invested in high-skilled jobs, we don't have an economy. You cannot blame this on immigrants. It's the people in power, the business interests that moved companies outside of the UK for their bottom line. But he can't talk about the real issues because, again, it's all about consolidating power, all about consolidating money and not questioning the real problems. Again, it's all fake populism, a way to not really have a real conversation. And that's why it's so frustrating to talk about this stuff because, again, he doesn't care about solving problems.
They have to deal with issues like the grooming gang scandal across much of northern England and many other.
And again, we know that white men are more likely to be a part of of grooming gangs. But again, he doesn't talk about it. He doesn't care about the facts. He just wants to cherry pick these things and go, look, they're evil. No, we need to look at the fact. Again, he doesn't care about the facts. It's all about feelings, baby.
Other areas, and they have to deal with the growing signs of segregation and sectarianism in our society. So this policy isn't working. That, by the way, we'll get onto this, I'm sure, but that is why British politics now is in the most unpredictable, chaotic, volatile moment that it's ever been on record. And that is why we've not only just gone from a massive Conservative majority to a massive Labour majority in 5 years, but that is why anything is possible in 2029.
It's not. It's people like him who sell this misinformation, that scapegoat immigrants and muddy the water and say, oh, immigrants are the real problem. Whereas, like, he cherry picks information and facts for his own gain without actually looking at what's going on and having a proportionate view of what's going on. But again, that's it. He is part of the problem. Like, this division comes from social media. It massively does. Like, since COVID, since Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these things, they sow misinformation. And, you know, you had Brexit, the scandal of Cambridge Analytica. They overspent on advertising, selling lies, selling misinformation about Brexit. Like, oh, as soon as we leave, everything will be great. Well, it wasn't, was it? We left. What were the economic benefits? No. The pound lost its value. We've lost literally billions from being in the EU. But they don't talk about that, do they? They don't talk about the realities of what Farage and Salders, Boris Johnson. And again, he is part of the problem, not the solution.
Wow. I mean, 20 years ago, there were very few centrists or moderates who were radically anti-immigration or that concerned about immigration, or outspokenly.
Yes, because they were not sold. Because we've had, in the last 20 years, we've had a constant barrage from the right-wing media, the Daily Mail, the Express, the Sun. Even the BBC has a bias against immigrants. They won't talk about that. Constant, when you're drip fed constantly, and they need to be. That's the thing. Like, this isn't a spontaneous talking point. Like, that's why it's fake populism. It's not a spontaneous thing that people are concerned about. People are concerned about healthcare, jobs, environment, getting on in life, lack of community. But they all put it as immigrant. They all they have to constantly hammer it. Like, that's what GB News constantly does. Like, the constant Islamophobia, anti-Muslim, you have to just ram it down people's throats, because that's essentially what propaganda does. It's tell you what to think, constantly. These are the problem. Immigration is the problem. Immigration. Immigrants the problem. Migrants. Small boats. Just repeat it. Small boats. Get Brexit done. Brexit. Taking back control. That's it. Just a constant barrage of these talking points that don't solve the problem. Brexit didn't solve the problem. And also focusing on immigrants and curtailing immigration will not solve the problem. So that's where I think I'll stop. We're 7 minutes into an hour video, but we know what he's going to say. It's just lies. It's fake populism. He doesn't care about the working people. He has no solutions. It's just immigrants are the problem. It's just a simplistic view of the world and the economy, and doesn't really tackle the problems that working people face. Low pay, shit jobs, unable to afford a house. And yeah, he links it all to immigration. But if we had more housing and we had good jobs, people would be better off. But we have no economy. That's the problem. Under neoliberalism, we have no economy. What do we make? Where is the value? Outside of, I mean, again, tech companies don't provide value. They just, we are creating the value on social media, Facebook, whatever. But again, there's real problems that we face in what is the economy going to be like in the 21st century? That's what we need to be talking about. Climate change, that's what we need. But again, they don't want to talk about it. It's all about immigration, to not talk about the real problems facing society. So comment below, and I'll see you in the next video.